This is Audible.
Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Fear the Beard by Lonnie Lynn Vale, narrated by Kendall Taylor and Mason Lloyd. Chapter 1. Tally. I'm not good at peopling. T-shirt. No, baby, I have to go to school. I smoothed my daughter's hair back gently. When Mommy gets home, she'll come to your room and give you a kiss, okay? That was if I got home on time. Last clinical, I didn't get home on time. In fact, I was home so late that I barely had the energy to make it through the door 4 long hours after my clinical was supposed to be over. My daughter's quiet pleas and sniffles with snot smeared on my scrub top had me wanting to cry right along with her. Every single time I went to school like this, she tried to get me to stay, and each time was getting harder and harder on me. My father took my daughter from me and settled her on his forearm. "Go, Tally," he ordered softly. "I've got her." My daughter's fat tears rolled silently down her cheeks. "Be good, baby," I ordered. "You go right to sleep for Papa, okay?" Tallulah pursed her lips, wiped her eyes, and buried her face into my father's neck. My 8-month-old daughter knew 2 words, bye-bye and fish. "You better go before you're late," my father ordered. I grimaced at him. "I'm going," I sighed. "See you tonight." With one final blown kiss to Tallulah, I pushed through the door and headed down the steps to the driveway. I looked back one final time to see my dad in the window helping Tallulah to wave at me. I smiled at her, then unlocked the doors to my Toyota 4Runner, my father's hand-me-down 1990 model that needed a paint job and a tune-up. However, when you're a almost 21-year-old single mom working 40 hours a week and going to school full-time, luxuries such as a new car weren't afforded. Hell, I was lucky if I had enough money to put gas in my car to get me to school and work. With one final look at the massive 5-bedroom monstrosity my parents had lived in for the best years of my life, I pulled a U-turn in the grass and carefully eased out of the driveway. My thoughts were on the first day of the last semester of nursing school, and I was still wondering, much like I was on the first day of school, what exactly I was thinking. I hated nursing. I hated it with a passion, in fact. I didn't like blood. I couldn't stand seeing broken bones. I actually hated people, too. I wasn't a good people person, and it seemed like everyone knew it. Like the biker at my side. I knew he was there. We were sitting at a red light, and I could feel his eyes on me. Did I turn to acknowledge him? No. What if he smiled? Was I expected to smile back? What if he waved? There was no way in hell I was waving back. Then there was the worry that he might think I was coming on to him when I most definitely wouldn't be. Why? Because I wasn't good at peopling. I, Talith Brianna Slater, was an introvert. I didn't do well in crowds. Talking to someone new made me feel like I had hives, and I was about to enter into an occupation that was known primarily for interacting with human beings. My phone rang, startling me out of my contemplation. "Hello?" "Where are you?" my best friend hissed. I rolled my eyes. "Be there in 5, I told her, and then hung up. I hung up because the light turned green, and I made a promise to myself the day that I'd brought Tallulah home from the hospital and we were nearly killed by a texting teenager, that I would never pick up the phone while I was driving ever again. And it was a good thing I did, or I might have missed the stupidity that happened directly in front of me. My foot eased off the brake, and my SUV started to inch forward. The motorcycle next to me revved his engine and started forward as well, and I was just about to press my foot to the gas when a large white maintenance van shot through the intersection, missing the biker by only a few inches, and zoomed on like nothing had happened, as if he hadn't just nearly run over a freaking person. The biker, sometime in between then and now, had slid sideways and was perpendicular to my car, staring at the road where the van had disappeared so intently that it made me quite nervous. I just about decided to get out and ask him if he was okay, and yes, I realize how extrovert like that would have been for me, when he turned and stared at me. The only thing I could see were his eyes, a blue so beautiful that they were piercing. They were shocking, and pairing those eyes with a man on a motorcycle was just wrong. Why? Because I had a weakness for bad boys, and a child to prove it. The thing that was even worse was following those chillin' eyes all the way to the school. Right into my school, where the only people that came into said school were other nursing students and teachers. He parked in the teacher parking lot, and I breathed a sigh of relief, thankful that I wouldn't have to park and walk in with him, since teachers had their own private entrance. Pulling into a spot next to the familiar white car belonging to my best friend, who was in the front seat down in the largest latte that our tiny town had to offer, and shutting off my car. I got out the same time Hadley did. "I think you pulled in behind Dr. Tommy." I blinked. "What?" I asked. "Who is that?" She started to snicker as she straightened her black scrub top. I looked down at my top and fingered the 4th star that I'd just sewn on this morning. 3 semesters down, 1 more to go. I could do it. I could do it. Maybe if I kept chanting that to myself, then eventually it would be true. The tests weren't the problem, though they were tough. No, my problem all boiled down to the hospital itself. "That's Dr. Bones." I froze, then turned, went to my tiptoes, and gasped. The moment I could see him getting off his motorcycle, I finally registered the scrub pants. Dr. Tamirkhani Vov, a.k.a. Dr. Tommy, a.k.a. Dr. Bones, who was dubbed that by the ghosts of nursing students passed for his lady boner-inducing powers, was the hot doctor who taught our critical care classes, and this was also the semester that we spent the most of our time in the ER, my worst nightmare. I also saw him nearly get hit at the stoplight just down the road. I would have had to perform mouth-to-mouth with him. I chuckled to hide the nervousness at seeing that man in a classroom and what that was doing to me. "I think you mean on him, not with him." I chuckled under my breath. "Sure, that's what I meant." She rolled her eyes and hefted her backpack, and I followed suit. "You have something cheesy looking on your shirt." I looked down, holding out my scrub top where she'd pointed to examine it, and laughed. "Tallulah was having eggs and cheese when I left," I explained. "I guess I'm lucky it's not vomit." Hadley snorted. "Hey, did you apply for the internship?" Hadley asked suddenly. "Yes," I muttered. "Of course I had. My mother would have killed me if I hadn't. My mother was director of nursing, and she would have had a coronary had I not applied. Apparently, it was a good way to get a leg up on other hires, or whatever. I didn't really care. She didn't know yet that I was likely going to work in a doctor's office and not the hospital at all, but she'd figure that out pretty quickly once I graduated. "I did too." She nodded her head. "My hope is to get in there with Dr. Bones. I hear he's a good teacher." I rolled my eyes. "Dr. Bones doesn't fuck students. He doesn't even fuck other nurses or doctors. In fact, I'm not quite sure that he's capable of even having sex." I whispered to my best friend. She rolled her eyes. "Yeah, but one can hope, can't she?" Yeah, one could hope. We walked up the hallway to where the critical concepts class was. Thank you to our small college for offering something brand new that no other nursing program in the country offered to their level 4 students. and I started to get lightheaded. Yeah, the idea of critical care, of anything that even remotely had to do with blood and gore, gave me the heebie-jeebies. I was determined not to let anyone know of my fear, though, even my best friend. I stepped through the doorway, and my stomach nodded. Here goes nothing. Chapter 2. Tally. If you don't shut up, I'll shove this stick down your throat. Why Tally shouldn't be trusted with tongue depressors when she's pissed. Sweet baby Jesus, Hadley groaned. We're going to die. Literally, how can anyone make it through life like this? I agreed. How were we going to make it through our days without falling into a puddle of goo at the feet of Dr. Tommy? I didn't think it was possible. Well, not now that he was our freaking teacher as well. Why he was a teacher, on top of being a freaking doctor at the hospital, was beyond me. But there he was, in our classroom, showing off his freaking tattoos. How is he allowed to show his tattoos? The girl on the other side of us, Elba, asked. We're not allowed to show ours. Is there something you ladies wish to discuss with the rest of the class? Dr. Tommy drawled, bringing our attention to him. I stalled. I was asking if either one of them had a pen I could use. Mine's no longer working. He started to stalk toward me, and I started to squirm in my chair. Please don't check my pen. Please don't check my pen. He didn't check my pen. No. Instead, he pulled a freaking pen out of his pocket, handed it to me, and waited while I tried to get my hands to work. Thank you, I murmured quietly, taking the pen gently. His eyes were an intense blue, so freaking blue that they looked fake. They looked even bluer when you paired them with his tan skin and black hair. Maybe next time you'll be prepared for my class, he murmured so softly that only Hadley and I could hear. My face turned an intense shade of red. I was sure. I will. I'm sorry, I mumbled. We were supposed to have 2 pens. That had been the instructions on the syllabus on the first day of class. 2 pens, 1 blue, 1 black. 2 pencils, 2 highlighters, 2 notebooks. 2, in case one failed. That had been his instructions. Always be prepared. Bring 2 of everything, always. Everything fails, so always have backup. Gritting my teeth, I gave my friends a sideways look that clearly relayed that they were to behave or I'd kill them, causing both of them to smile. Elba was a very cute Latina girl who I met the first day of class, and she'd quickly become one of my very best friends. She was getting married in the fall after we graduated, and I was really happy for her. As I was saying, before I was so rudely interrupted, your first clinical in the ER might be somewhat overwhelming. That's to be expected. However, over time you will learn the ropes, find your stride, and realize that it isn't some big, scary place that will swallow you alive. Dr. Tommy, I refused to call him Dr. Bones anymore, continued. I started doodling on my paper, drawing curls and swirls around mine and Tallulah's names. I'd just made a 4th star when a large tanned hand came and snatched the pen out of my hand. I can see now why your pen ran out of ink. Dr. Tommy stared down at me with barely restrained impatience. My face flushed. If it were possible to melt onto the floor in a puddle of complete embarrassment, I would have done it. Right then and there. Jesus Christ! I think you should see me after class, he murmured. My brows furrowed. I hadn't done anything wrong. Looking over to Hadley, she returned a sympathetic smile before turning her head down to her own work. Okay, I finally said. I'll see you after class. He nodded once, but kept his pen. Irrational anger flowed through me throughout the rest of class, and by the time that had ended, I was beside myself. Do you want me to wait? Hadley asked. I shook my head. No, I snapped. I have to go to work after this anyway. I just hope he doesn't make me late. Hadley packed her book into her bag. gave me a worried look, and then left without another word. I stayed in my seat once my bag was packed, waiting to see what Dr. McAsshole had to say. Once the last person escaped, he stopped erasing the board. And yes, I was admiring his ass in case you were wondering, turned and crossed his thick, muscular arms over his chest. The other teachers gave you glowing recommendations, he started saying. I licked my lips. Thank you? I didn't know what to say, nor where he was going with this. I wanted you to understand that I won't tolerate this kind of behavior when I have you in my ER. I blinked, then blinked again. I started to say, but he interrupted me. You'll be starting on your nursing internship next week. You'll be there 2 days out of the week, 12-hour shifts, and always under me or Dr. Wilde. I blinked some more. I got it? I was finally able to get out. He nodded his head. Though I expect that has more to do with who your mother is than whether or not you're actually qualified or skilled enough to be there. My mouth dropped open in affront. Oh, I assure you that I am skilled and qualified enough to be there. My back straightened. Is that all? I could have sworn I saw his lips twitch at my show of anger, but no other signs of his reaction to my ire were apparent. Yes, that'll be all. I nodded and stood, throwing my bag on my shoulder and practically stomping toward the door. He stopped me, though, the moment I was about to exit fully. Thank you. I froze and turned. For what? I asked stiffly. For not running over me this morning. Thank you for paying attention. I didn't bother to answer him. Otherwise, I might have said that I now wished that I hadn't been paying attention. Motherfucker. Who did he think he was? My mother wouldn't stoop so low as to get her daughter a job. Would she?
Chapter 3. Tommy. Whatever, motherfucker. Whatever. Coffee cup. I was thankful that the shift was over. This had been one of the worst 12 hours I'd had in a very long time, since med school at least. Not because the patients had been difficult or anything, but because of her. The freaking student who made my dick hard with one whispered word from those luscious would-look-great wrapped around my cock lips. She wasn't tall, but she wasn't short. Her long brown hair looked just as good flowing down her back as it did up high in a ponytail or in a fucking messy bun scrunched at the top of her head. Sweats, scrubs, jeans. They all did it for me when she wore them. There was literally not a goddamn thing she was able to wear that didn't get me harder than stone. Her green eyes were mesmerizing. One look into them and it was easy as hell to forget that she was a student. A 20-year-old one at that. All right, Mr. Perv, I thought to myself. Time to stop thinking about girls who are more than 10 years younger than you. My body, however, didn't care that she was 20, nearly 21 according to her school files, to my 33. It didn't care that I'd get fired if I was found fucking her. It also didn't care that I was trying to control it. The beast wouldn't be controlled. See you tomorrow, Dr. Bones. I flipped off my fellow doctor and good friend, Dr. Wilde. Dr. Wilde was an ex-Marine who thought it was damned hilarious that all the nursing students, and now nurses, were calling me that. I, on the other hand, hated it. I didn't care if I did induce lady boners in my students. It was annoying, and if that motherfucking nickname was whispered to my club brothers, I'd never hear the fucking end of it. Catch you tomorrow, asshole, I mumbled, pushing through the staff exit that led to the staff parking lot. The moment the door closed behind me, I headed around the building to where I pulled my motorcycle up onto the curb. It came to a quick halt, though, the moment I realized that there were two people standing incredibly close to my bike. Freezing in the shadows to see what they were doing so close to my baby, I listened. "I want to keep her overnight," a man said into the darkness. "It's time. She's 8 months old. She's old enough now that you can wean her off your tit for a night and let me keep her. Sheena wants to have a part in her life." I could have told him that bringing another woman into this conversation wasn't the right thing to do, but it was useless. He looked like the stupid type. "I still breastfeed her overnight," an extremely familiar voice filled the air. "And you know this. If she doesn't have it, she doesn't do well." Wait, Talith had a kid? The man let out a frustrated groan. "This is ridiculous," he growled. "I'm never going to see this kid. She'll be 15 before she's finally off your boob and ready to mingle with the world." He kicked the gravel at his feet, causing stray rocks to jolt forward and hit Tally's feet as well as the building. "I don't know what I ever saw in you." Tally stiffened. "Russell, my daughter is 8 months old, and in those 8 months, Tallulah has been diagnosed with asthma. She has pneumonia once a month, strep throat every other month, ear infections, stomach viruses. She's been on every freaking antibiotic that the world of modern medicine has to offer. The one and only time you had her, you fed her aspirin. Aspirin that nearly killed her. And you didn't even feel bad about doing it. What exactly do you want from me?" My stomach tightened at hearing he'd fed a child aspirin, even ignorantly. The repercussions of that one act could have been catastrophic, especially to a baby. "It's obvious that you aren't gaining anything by doing what you're doing. I said I'm sorry for that. How long are you going to hold it over my head?" he demanded. My eyes turned to her, and she looked like she was ready to cry. "I'm not, Russell. I'm just doing what I have to do to get me and Tallulah through. So please, for the love of God, leave me alone. You have your visitation days. If you feel that you want those changed, please feel free to take me to court." "I can't take you to court, and you damn well know it. Your father's friends will shut me down again with some medically necessary bullshit that we both know isn't actually necessary in the slightest." I came out of the shadows, startling not just this Russell character, but Tally as well. "Actually," I cut in, making sure the both of them could see me well, "breastfeeding is one of the best things a mother can do for her infant, especially a sickly one like it sounds like your daughter is. You're lucky that your daughter has a mother that cares for her like she does." "And just who are you?" Russell bowed his chest up. Russell was about 3 inches taller than my 6' 1" frame, and he looked like he was in incredibly good shape. I now could see what Tally saw in him. He was an attractive fucker, I'd give him that. His attitude, however, was not. "I'm Dr. Tomarkanov." Russell blinked, then sneered. "Well, this is a private conversation," he informed me haughtily. I shrugged. "Just need to get to my bike." I pointed, and the man turned, eyeing the bike like it was some random piece of trash. "Figures," he grumbled. "I'll be talking to our lawyers again, Tal. It's time." Tally didn't bother to reply and watched him walk away with barely restrained violence shimmering in her eyes. "You okay?" I rumbled, turning fully to face her. She breathed out a shaky breath. "Yeah," she nodded twice. "I'm okay." "You had a real winner there." I meant it to come out as teasing, but she nodded in all seriousness. "I know." She swiped angrily at her eyes. "I broke up with him before I even knew I was pregnant. The worst decision of my life was dating him, but out of it came one of the best things that has ever happened to me." "So the kid that your mom shows around the ER is yours and not your sister's?" She smiled and shook her head. It was nice to see that she was hiding the bitch tonight, something I'd been dealing with ever since that day in my class 2 weeks ago when she was talking about me and I could hear her every word. Well, not her, but her friends. But then she'd defended them, blatantly lying to my face, and it had pissed me the hell off. Which was why I'd said rude words to her about her mother getting her job in the ER. Ever since, she'd been cool and distant, whether we were in class or in the ER, and it was starting to grate on my nerves. She finally turned to face me, and my gut tightened at seeing the tear tracks on her face. There wasn't much that affected me. I was an ex-Marine and had served as a doctor for 4 years before I was discharged and came home to Mooresville to start my career. I'd been here for almost 3 years, and I'd seen and done a lot in all that time. Tears, though, they were my undoing. Seeing a woman cry, young or old, was enough to make my stomach clench and my heart start to ache. Yeah, Tallulah is mine, her mouth quirked. Thankfully, I'd been smart enough to know where I was going with my life after college. Started taking dual credit classes and graduated with my associates right out of high school. Took microanatomy 1 and 2 during the summer before classes started, and about killed myself that summer. She hesitated. I went a little wild during that week between classes and made a huge mistake by sleeping with Tallulah's father. Got pregnant. Thankfully, I was able to make it through my entire first semester and most of my second semester before I had her, only missing 2 class days due to giving birth. Thank God I was able to make them up. Took the summer off with Tallulah and then picked right back up during the 3rd semester. I blinked, surprised by the information dump. But then I saw her face and realized rather quickly that she was nervous. "Your car here?" I asked, looking around the nearly empty lot. She pointed to a red, late-model 4Runner, and I gestured for her to start walking. "Come on," I ordered. She fell into step beside me. "I graduated school when I was 14, I said. "Started college almost immediately after that. Once I graduated with my MD, I went into the Marines where I stayed for 4 years. Got out, been here for 3 now." Lightning lit up the night sky and was immediately followed by a rumble of thunder. In that moment of light, her face was illuminated, allowing me to see her pleasure at hearing my story. "That sounds like you've been busy," she said, reaching into her pocket for the keys just as the first raindrop hit. "Are you going to ride in this?" Another raindrop fell, landing on my arm. I nodded my head. "Yep," I said, turning around and walking away. Then, as an afterthought, I yelled over my shoulder so she'd hear me clearly. "A biker doesn't just ride in the sunshine, Tally. There's always bad that comes with good. Gotta take life as it comes." With that, the heavens opened and I smiled as I reached my bike. Bikers fell into 2 camps when it came to riding in the rain. Some hated it, some didn't mind. Me? I loved it. As long as it wasn't 30 degrees. On a night like tonight, with it being 80 degrees, the cool raindrops felt nice against my skin. Pulling out my leather jacket from my saddlebags, I shrugged it on and zipped it up before I snatched up my helmet and seated it on my head. Then I started the bike up and roared out of the parking lot, sparing a look back twice to see if her eyes were on me. They were.
Chapter 4. Tally. I used to be addicted to the hokey pokey, but I turned myself around. Bumper sticker. You've got to be kidding me. I shook my head. No way in hell. Y'all, we have a freaking test tomorrow. We literally cannot do this. Come on. Hadley pulled my arm. Go get it and let's go. It'll be fun. Those words were how I ended up having a vibrator race. I shook my head in refusal. No, just no. The girls, my closest friends, grinned. I really can't. I asked my parents to watch Tallulah so I could study for this test. I have to utilize. Hadley placed her hand over my mouth and shook her head. No, she glared. I already had this discussion with you. You pay for daycare, and they don't mind taking her there. They also don't mind watching her on the days you have tests or to work on the weekend. I glared right back at her. I don't feel like this is a productive use of my time. If I wasn't going to study, I'd just have Tallulah with me. I growled at her, yanking my hand from hers. Elba, seeing that this was going to be another knockdown, drag-out fight between us, backed away and took a seat on my front porch steps, turning her back to us. Seriously, Hadley crossed her arms. You've been studying since Doc Bones's class. There's absolutely no reason that you can't just come with us for an hour. She had a point. I'd been studying for about 7 hours now. But I wasn't like her. I couldn't scan over the work once and then have it all down for the test. I had to actually work at it, study the materials, read the goddamn chapter. She was one of those students who could scan the notes before class and then take the test, no problem. And it made me want to cunt punch her. She acted like this was all a joke, and it wasn't. I had $30,000 in freaking student loans to pay off once I was done. I couldn't fuck around here. If I didn't graduate, I was screwed, and not in a good way. 1 hour, I said, and I'm taking my note cards. Everyone cheered, and I shook my head and slunk back inside, my white-socked feet shifting against the carpet as I moved. "Wear something nice," she ordered. I flipped her off, causing her to laugh. I didn't own anything nice. Why? Because I was overweight. BT, or before Tallulah, I was skinny. I fit into size 6 jeans and could squeeze my breasts into a small tank top. Now I was in a size 14 pants, and I could barely fit my breasts into a size large. My boobs had grown from a 34B to a 36D, and all of my tops were now maternity tops because Tallulah nursed just as often as she ate solid foods. Sure, she likely could have stopped nursing by now, but she was so unhealthy that I felt like I needed to give her every opportunity to beef up her immune system. She had asthma and had been hospitalized for 4 times during her short 8 months of life. She was always on antibiotics for this sickness or that, and there was never a day that went by that I didn't wonder if there wasn't something more serious going on with her than what her doctors had found. So I did everything I could to make sure she had the best lot in life. And if that meant that I breastfed the child until she was 7, then so be it, though I hope to God I didn't have to. I was in a love-hate relationship with my breast pump already. "Don't forget it!" Hadley screamed. I turned the corner of the hallway and headed to my room. My house was a 2-bedroom cottage on the backside of my parents' property. It was more what you would call a tiny house minus the wheels, but I'd bought it all on my own, and it was mine. There was a small living area that tied straight into the kitchen, a loft above the kitchen that I put all my schoolwork in, so Tallulah wouldn't be tempted to mark on any paperwork that I had to turn in for clinicals or tear into my books, something I'd learned the hard way. My bedroom and Tallulah's bedroom had actually been one large one, but I'd had them split the large space with a wall, and now each of us had a smaller bedroom that would serve our purposes very nicely for now. My dad loved it the moment he saw it, and mentioned to my mother that he wouldn't mind going tiny too. Apparently, living in a big empty 5-bedroom, 5,000-square-foot house wasn't something he wanted to do anymore. That, or clean it. My brother, sister, and I had the best years of our lives in that house, and I loved it more than anything. The fact that they were even considering getting rid of it made me break out in hives. That house was my dream house. 2 stories, it was a pier and beam with a wide 10-foot porch that spanned the entire front of the house. The back porch was even more impressive, and I hoped that by the time they were ready to sell it, that I had the money to buy it from them. Turning the light on in my room, I admired the dark gray walls, running my hands down the short wall that led to my dresser. After slipping on a pair of jeans, because this girl didn't wear shorts out of the house anymore, I grabbed a clean t-shirt that I hadn't leaked breast milk on and pulled it over my head. This one was new. I hadn't worn it yet because wearing the bigger clothes admitted defeat. I sighed and looked down at my body. I was curvy, sure, but I wasn't healthy like I'd been in high school. Gone was the toned belly with the hint of abs. In its place was a rounded belly with stretch marks. My breasts jiggled more, and I wasn't sure if it was a bad idea to go out in this shirt or not. It was definitely revealing, especially now that the girls were more expressive. "Don't forget your vibrator!" I shook my head, looking at the drawer of my night table. I did have one. Didn't every woman in the United States with a healthy sex drive that was unattached have one? What one did not do, though, was take it out of the privacy of your room. Or at least, I shouldn't. Sighing deeply, I walked forward and grabbed the vibrator, being sure to take off the dual head and rabbit-eared silicone attachment that came with it. If they wanted me to bring it, I'd bring the vibrating part only. And it turns out, that was all I really needed anyway. I can't believe y'all are making me do this, I grumbled to my friends. Elba threw her arm around my shoulder. You know you're having fun, she teased. I was. There was some sort of thing going on at the fairgrounds. I wasn't quite sure what exactly it was. The day part had been some sort of adult entertainment expo, and the night part was fun activities for adults that involved a lot of heavy drinking. Since I was the only one under 21, I was the lone girl in our gaggle who didn't have a drink in her hand and hadn't had one all night long. I am, I admitted, and I've also gone over these note cards 10 million times, she snorted. You know this. You need to take a deep breath. I did know it. Now, who knew whether it would be there tomorrow or not? Hadley came up and stopped in front of me, a scowl on her face. You haven't entered yet, she declared loudly, causing some people surrounding us to eye her warily. Hadley was one of those people who you either loved or hated. She was loud, opinionated, and didn't take shit from anyone, me included. If I enter, can we leave? I asked hopefully. She narrowed her eyes. Yes. My brows rose. You're serious? I asked, hopefulness tinting my voice. She nodded. Yes, if you enter. I looked at the group that was gathering around the large, corrugated tin table and straightened my spine in resignation. Fine, I said, taking my vibrator out of my pocket. Let's do this. Elba and Hadley whooped in excitement, drawing more stares. This time, though, one particular set of staring eyes belonging to a certain biker with gorgeous blue eyes and black hair caught my attention. I could only see one eye and his black hair due to the crowd of people, but that was enough to make my heart start hammering. He looked familiar, but since it was getting darker and there were so many people here, I couldn't quite make him out enough to be sure. Shivering, I turned away from the stairs and moved to the crowd. You entering? A big man, and by big, I mean huge, asked. I nodded at him. Step up to the white line. The next round will start in about a minute and a half. He showed me. Winner gets this. I eyed the huge, hulking thing. I said. Okay? I wasn't sure what one would do with a double-sided donkey dick-sized dildo, but I was fairly certain that I didn't want it. The minute and a half whizzed by, and I looked over to my right to see the other girls standing just behind the cordoned-off area. I grimaced, and Hadley waved. She pointed frantically, and I jumped when the loud buzzing started to fill the night air around me. It sounded weird with the vibrators up against the metal, making it sound much louder than it should. Turning the vibrator in my hand on high, I placed it on the starting line and looked nervously around. This was incredibly embarrassing, but it was also quite funny. The girls next to me looked to be a little older than me, though the drinks in their hands and their green wristbands, indicating they were over 21, were enough to tell me that. Ready, set, go. I let go of my burden, watching in silence as it made its way down the table, vibrating its little heart out. Some other girl's monster dildo took first, pulling away like it was meant to do this for a living, and I started to snicker. Interesting. My body froze at hearing that voice, and I turned to find Dr. Tommy dressed in black jeans, a black t-shirt, black motorcycle boots, and a leather vest denoting him as a patched-in member of the Dixie Wardens MC at my back, with 4 other men who were all wearing the same vest. This is what y'all do instead of studying for your exam tomorrow? Dr. Tommy continued, looking from me to the girls at my side. I bit my lip, face flushing a bright red, and turned to snatch my vibrator off the tin that we were using to have the race on. I shoved it into my pants pocket, vibrator still on, and stared at him like he wouldn't notice. He did notice. He also noticed that the vibrator was still on. "You run your batteries down," he pointed out. Hadley snatched my vibrator out of my pocket and immediately shoved it back into position with no one the wiser. I turned back to look at Dr. Tommy and crossed my arms over my chest.